presentation of Financial Crisis Recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets. Now, here's nationally renowned speaker and expert on getting you on the path to financial strength, Todd Rooker.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cover Your Assets. We are here every Saturday morning from 8 till 9, following up with Home Talk and Jason Walgrave, covering everything related to your finances, protecting your money, making certain that you're never in a financial crisis, and if you are, how do you deal with it? How do you minimize the damage? And how do you get back on your feet in a very short period of time? As many of you know, my primary business is dealing with people who are in this situation, not selling any one particular product, simply having a grasp for all the things that one might face when considering a financial crisis, asset protection to preserve things to ensure that you're not in that situation. And I bring to you some of the most seasoned professionals that are out there in the business to try to give you the information you're looking for, answer your questions. As always, you can call into our show right away this morning and get your questions answered. We're going to be speaking today with bankruptcy attorney David Kingsbury from the Kingsbury Law Offices. David has an enormous amount of experience in bankruptcy, probably one of the most experienced bankruptcy attorneys in the state of Minnesota, without doubt, and possibly one of the most experienced bankruptcy attorneys throughout the country, given the volume of cases that he has tried and succeeded through the bankruptcy courts. And I want to say a lot of things today are going to be exposed about what separates a good bankruptcy attorney from another. David has filed over 7,000 cases in Minnesota. Those are bankruptcy exclusive cases. So if you want to talk to an experienced bankruptcy attorney, somebody who really knows what to expect when going through a bankruptcy case, whether that be a Chapter 13, Chapter 7, which are for the most part the personal bankruptcies, the bankruptcies that one individual might face. We can talk about business, but we're going to try to pertain to personal bankruptcies today. And knowing the trustees, knowing what to expect, how they'll react to certain things that are brought up in a court case and preparing you. We're going to be talking about all those things. So by all means, call into the show, get your questions answered. That number, 651-646-8255. Say that number again, write it down, call us, 651-646-8255. So here we go. David, welcome to our show. Great to have you.
Good morning, Todd. Thanks for having me back again.
Well, we are happy to have you back, David. David and I work together on many, many client cases and interact very, very much hand in glove. I know what he does. He knows what I do. And consequently, I think we can bring about a tremendous value to our clients as a whole. We're going to begin talking today about bankruptcy and why a person in the first place might even consider bankruptcy. So, David, I'll throw that to you. Why and when might a person want to consider bankruptcy? What would be the reason or the trigger points that would cause that to come about?
Wow, broad question. I see people from all walks of life in all different kinds of circumstances. Frankly, it's simple math. You don't have the resources to cover what you've got out there for liabilities. If you're straining to put food on the table, pay basic utilities, housing, those types of things, frankly, usually it's inculcated in our culture. Don't file bankruptcy, pay your debts. Generally speaking, there's going to be some kind of an event that either people are going to experience, like getting served a summons and complaint for a lawsuit from a creditor, a bank levy, a lot of collection pressure, something like that. Or maybe that hasn't happened yet, but the writing's on the wall, and they're going to see that coming down the pike here fairly quickly. And so they're going to come and see me proactively. So but when people come and see me, I always say either their credit is really bad or it's really good, but it's going to be really bad real soon. So
that is exactly the type of client that you and I deal with. One of the fallacies, and I know you've already kind of brought it up, is that obviously if I'm going to consider bankruptcy, I'm flat broke. I've got nowhere else to go, and this is the only alternative left. And I know that is the prevailing sentiment for most even practicing bankruptcy attorneys, because on the whole, that is what they see. I have a different opinion about that. I believe that bankruptcy, if you use it properly, could be one of the best asset protection tools that you have. But you've got to understand that the exempt assets in bankruptcy, like homes equity and retirement accounts, can be preserved. But remember, if you take them out to subsidize your payments, you can bleed yourself completely dry, run out of that exempt asset. And then when you file bankruptcy, frankly, at that point, true enough, there is nothing left to protect. But if you went to see someone like us, talk to us about this bankruptcy thing, you might be much better served by preserving those assets, filing bankruptcy, and then be in a strong position to rebuild yourself. When a person considers bankruptcy, I think a lot of times they are in a very compromised position. But I think what an experienced bankruptcy attorney can do for you is to bring that point up, even at a time when you may not even be considering it, to show you what bankruptcy might be able to do and how it might be able to preserve the assets that you have remaining and possibly put you in a much better position. Do you agree with that, David?
Well, I certainly do, and it much to a lot of people's surprise, a lot of my clients have assets. They have money. Frankly, bankruptcy is not for poor people. Poor people are kind of under the radar. I mean, if you're really poor, you're poverty-stricken, your creditors can't touch you. But if you have assets, you're a target. And that's when you need some protection, you need some help. People come to see me when they're in a jam, and I can use the bankruptcy strategies to help them out.
And I think that for a lot of people, they'll say, well, how the heck am I going to afford a bankruptcy attorney when I can't afford to pay my bills?
Yeah, that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I wish I could do bankruptcies for free, but it's a business. I have expenses myself, so that doesn't happen. You're not going to see that anywhere. And when somebody, and I do get that question often, we get to the end of the analysis and the case counsel, and I say, okay, Mr. X, this is what it's going to cost you to do your bankruptcy case. And they look at me and say, well, gosh, I don't have any money. That's why I'm here. How am I supposed to pay you? And my typical response is, and I've thought about this over the years, what's the best way to react to something like that? Because it's kind of sensitive, obviously. And all I can really say is, that's a really good question. How are you going to do that? And here's what other people do. They borrow it, they save up for it, they sell something, they take a distribution out of life insurance, a pension plan, something like that. But, frankly, it is going to cost a few bucks to do bankruptcy. Congress has made it a lot more difficult to do bankruptcy, and so there's more time, more expense. But, if you got a $100,000 nut and it's going to cost you a couple of grand to get rid of it, most people are going to find a way to scrape up the money, and it's the best deal you're ever going to get.
Well, and I think also, David, the realities are that most people are not paying their bills at the time that they get there. And so the truth being that if you're not making a house payment, and if you were to lose your home and have to rent, you're going to have to come up with money to do that. If you're not paying your credit cards and you previously were killing yourself to do it, and you've come to the conclusion that you can no longer do that, it presupposes that the very money that you would be using to pay your creditors to survive, you've now come to a point where you're not able to do that. At that juncture, you're going to take the same amount of money that you would have paid your creditors with, and maybe you couldn't afford to pay the minimum payments on the credit cards of $2,000 a month, but you can afford $1,000 a month, and you need to save that money up so that you actually can seek some representation and maybe bring closure to this issue fundamentally and then begin to move on with your life. So I think oftentimes that's where the money's coming from.
It really is. I mean, I have some people that haven't paid any of their creditors for forever, and they're unemployed. They have no money. Guess what? They can't file a bankruptcy, and they probably don't need to at that point. But for those other folks in that category you're talking about, that's quite often the source of the funds for getting their representation in their bankruptcy case.
Well, the funny thing about that is when they're unable to make the payments, they are going to have a surplus of money, and the folks who are completely flat broke, yeah, true enough, they're non-collectible. They've got wages that can't be garnished because they're exempt, because their incomes are so low, or they've got public assistance or some reason. But when a person has something to protect, my perception of this is a little bit different in that I see people who will take and exhaust every financial resource they have, retirement accounts, savings accounts, everything they've got, trying to make their payments on time, completely run out of money, And then when they really need a bankruptcy attorney because they've got judgments and they've got garnishments at work taking 25% of their income, now at this point when they desperately need a bankruptcy attorney, they have exhausted every resource that they formerly had just trying to do the so-called right thing, pay their bills on time.
Yeah.
Now they got to go and borrow money to get a bankruptcy attorney from their church because they don't even have enough money to afford that.
That happens more often than you think. That's correct. Yeah.
So David, tell me what separates how would one look for a bankruptcy attorney, and what separates the good attorneys from the average folks who, hey, I do a little business incorporation, do a little divorce, do a little this, do a little that. Oh yeah, and I'm a bankruptcy attorney too.
Well, experience, volume of cases over the years. Is it something you do day in, day out? One of the interesting aspects of the recession, if people look at lawyers and think, well, they're kind of the high buck members of our society, and they're never going to have any problems. But quite honestly, I mean, there's a lawyer in every corner. Law schools in this city, there's 4 of them pumping out new lawyers, can't find jobs. There's older practitioners that their areas of expertise and stream of income is dried up because people can't afford divorce attorneys, business attorneys, criminal law attorneys anymore. So what's the growth area of practice? It's bankruptcy. So they've gone into that. And so you hit it right on the head. Onesies and twosies, I wouldn't recommend anybody hire them to do a bankruptcy. You've got to have the experience under your belt so you can properly analyze and approach a case, put it together correctly, and represent the client in the best manner possible to get the benefit out of the bankruptcy code for them to get that discharge and do it in the right way. So you got to have that experience. You've got to have a good paralegal staff. You've got to have the right programs. And you've got to take the time to do a good, thoughtful case analysis for somebody. A lot of attorneys out there, they decide they're going to be a bankruptcy attorney, and free consults. Quite honestly, most of them have you come in, they're talking to you for 20, 25 minutes. They're really looking to see whether or not you've got enough money to pay them, not really checking you out to see what your situation is and how the bankruptcy code is going to affect you and whether or not it's going to be a really good idea. That's for later, after they've decided whether or not you may be a good client for them. So.
Well, this is one I want to go back to because what you've just mentioned is the most important thing. Look, everybody believes that bankruptcy, like many other things, is an apples-to-apples comparison. It's pretty much all the same, and the less you can pay, the better off you are, and it's such nonsense. Number one, more often than not, you've got a practitioner who is learning on your dime because if they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't be the cheapest person on the block. In nearly any business, you can